Welcome to the Virtual Antics podcast, where we help entrepreneurs streamline their business to six figures and beyond. These short, sweet, and info-packed episodes will inspire, educate, and leave you feeling motivated to take one more step forward in your business. So put down your never-ending to-do list, because in this podcast, we are interviewing the best of the best in the entrepreneurial world as they spill their secrets to success. This podcast is sponsored by Nodora, the all-in-one software for entrepreneurs to grow their business with unlimited landing pages, automations, emails and text campaigns, and so much more. I'm your host, Natalie Guzman. Now let's get into it. Hey guys, welcome back to Virtual Antics Podcast. As always, I'm your host, Natalie Guzman. I am so excited because I have a dynamite podcaster with me today. She is Lindsay McMahon. She is the host of All Ears English. Her podcast is downloaded 4 million times per month globally and been ranked in the best of Apple podcast categories in 2018 and 2019, as well as the #1 in U.S. education language courses. Lindsay and her podcast has been featured in Podcast Magazine, Language Magazine, and Forbes. Welcome, Lindsay. How are you doing today?
Thank you, Natalie. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me on your show.
So excited to have you. Absolutely love your podcast, especially I love languages. I'm married to someone that speaks a different language than me, so I think it's absolutely amazing what you're doing.
Thank you.
Tell us a little bit more about your podcast and your business.
Happy to. So we launched our podcast kind of in the early days of podcasting in 2013. And at the time, I launched the show with my co-host at that time, who was also from Boston. We were together in person podcasting. We had both traveled the world quite a bit and taught English as a second language in Japan. I had taught in South America, New York City, and I said, hey, I heard about this podcasting thing. I was listening to a couple of personal development shows, and I said, what about a podcast for English learners, for adults? So we launched it, and then a business grew around it. It just kind of caught on from the start. We had a nice cover art. We showed our faces on the show, which a lot of ESL teachers were kind of trying to stay more professional at the time, whereas we wanted to be fun. You know, we knew what we were doing, but we wanted to have fun on this show, right? And so it stood out, and it's always been a high-ranking show, a successful show. And then over the years, we launched another show around a niche within ESL, which is IELTS, a test prep show. And then we launched a third show last October, Business English. So a business grew around it. Eventually, we built 2 apps, did some live events in Japan, Boston, and New York City. And now we sell online courses. We do sponsorships with brands. We do licensing. And so our business model has built, but it's all still with the podcast in the center, because that's where we're able to spread our message. Our message is connection, not perfection, our vision, our values. And it is also obviously a lead generator at the top of our funnel. So
that is amazing and so cool. We are a, what's it called? Dual language household. So we speak English and Spanish, and I still do not know Spanish. And I can get by, but it's, I've really learned that how amazing languages are, and learned, my husband's Puerto Rican, and then we have a lot of friends that are Mexican. And so even though they both speak Spanish, a lot of the words are not the same, and a lot of the slang is not the same. So how do you kind of address that when in your podcast and when you're trying to teach people English?
It's a great question. So our kind of angle on English is American English. So we're very upfront with our audience. We say, this is what we know. All of our co-hosts across all 3 shows are American native English speakers. So we teach American English, but we do a lot of guest interviews, especially on the bigger show, All Ears English. Just in the last month, I've interviewed 3 of my, I guess I would call them friends / other ESL co-hosts, podcasters who are British. I've interviewed people from Canada on the show, England, all other native English speaking countries, and also international people on the show. So you end up with a mix of accents, and we talk about slang, we compare cultures, we really get into it. It's really fun, actually.
That's awesome. I was just thinking, I'm from Massachusetts, so Boston is almost a whole accent in itself.
Oh my gosh, I'm from New Hampshire, and so I grew up going to Mass all the time. I didn't know you're from there. That's very cool.
Yeah,
okay.
I lived there till I was 20, and I lived towards 2 areas. I had divorced parents, so I was in Boston area, but I was also near kind of Connecticut in Western Mass.
All right.
I used to go to New
Okay.
Hampshire for summer camp, so that's pretty cool.
The Boston accent is so much fun. We've had 2 or 3 interviews with people from Boston, and we have a blast with it. It's great. Oh, so much character.
Oh my gosh, it's so fun. I love talking, and when I talk with my family, I get a little bit of the accent back. I
I'm
don't
sure.
have it anymore, but it's so much fun. And just, I think that's what you just said, character, right?
Mm.
That's one of the things I love about languages is that everyone has their own culture and character. And like, oh, I just love listening to my in-laws speak Spanish, even though sometimes I have no idea
Oh,
what they're saying because oh, it's just so amazing. I really really love languages and it's crazy how many different languages there are, right? So, how do you tackle, you have a lot of your listeners are not just one language. They're all different
right.
languages trying to learn English, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So how do we handle that?
Yeah.
Good
How do you do
question.
that?
Good question. So the level that we target is the global professional, right? So they, in terms of like, we consider it the intermediate to advanced level, right? So these students, these listeners are already potentially doing business in English. They're good enough to be doing that in many cases, so they can understand. So it's full immersion, right? I mean, my co-host Aubrey, she could run the podcast in French, right? She speaks French fluently, but that's not how we do it. It's an immersion method, and so it's all in English. You definitely run into challenges when it comes to selling courses and copywriting, right? Conversion stuff, which we could talk about if you want around course sales. But we do our best to be as visual as we can in our promotions and as clear in our copywriting as we can, which is an ongoing challenge. But yeah, for the learning, I think it's good. They need that at that level. They want to feel like they're sitting in a cafe and listening to a conversation between 2 native English speakers. And so that's what we give them. So
Oh, that is super cool. I love that.
yeah.
Because it's almost like, do you kind of tell stories as well? Because I feel like I would learn really well just by listening to a story.
Yeah, I just I'm collaborating in a few weeks with someone who specializes. Her podcast is also an ESL podcast, but what they do is they kind of follow the the moth, the moth where people go up on stage and share a story, that concept. Yeah, so they follow that concept. So they have a storyteller. I'm going to be on her show sharing one life story that I have to tell and adding a lot of value, and that is her entire method. So all ESL podcasters, I guess, have a different, as all podcasters do, have their own format. There are a lot of directions you can take language learning in. For us, it's a very fast-paced, always 2 hosts, conversational 15-minute format. Boom, boom, boom. It's fun. Role plays. We teach you something. There's a takeaway. And then we focus on our value, which is human connection. Because I think there's something more to learning a language than grammar and vocabulary. If that's why we're here, then it's not for me, right? It's for the human connection. So we bring that across for every episode.
And I feel like you definitely learn a language better when you're focusing on that connection. Like I know for me, right, I kind of learned Spanish just by being in a room with my in-laws who all spoke Spanish around me. And then I
Yeah.
was able to get the pronunciation better than I ever could in Spanish class back in high school. So one
100%.
of the common questions I get is like people will start talking to me in Spanish because they'll hear me maybe say a very basic command to my children in Spanish. My accent is so on point because I was listening to them that they're like, "You
Yes.
must speak Spanish." But I mean,
Yeah.
you turned this into, gradually went into a business, which is amazing. I love those type of businesses.
Yeah.
And so tell us about your course and like kind of what it's about and how you guys help people.
Yeah, I mean, we have multiple courses. We have kind of a suite of courses at this point, right? So we've been in business for 10 years, and direct sales to listeners, to individuals, is one way that we drive revenue for sure. So we have an IELTS course, which is a test prep. I don't know if you've heard of the IELTS exam, International English Language Testing System. It's a test which, if you want to immigrate from, let's say, for example, Japan to the UK, to get that visa, you need to take this test, or to get the job, which gets you the visa, there's a test involved. And so we prep them for that. My employee, Jessica, one of the co-hosts on IELTS Energy, was an examiner in that test for like 15 years. And so she knows it extremely well. And so we built a course around that. And then we built a business English course, which has done really well for our audience. We built another course, which was actually a road trip I took in 2016 around the country. I took my camera and interviewed people everywhere. It was incredible. An adventure. It's an adventure course. So yeah, we've done all kinds of things here.
That is so cool. And I love that because I was on a podcast recently and they talked about the two different types of businesses. You're either doing something you love and it gradually turns into a business, which is kind of sounds like what you guys did, or you get like me, I was kind of thrust in a position where I had to make money from home. And so I was kind of thrust into a situation. So I love hearing stories about that type of scenario and how you kind of gradually built this. And it kind of shows you that, you know, a lot of times entrepreneurs, we quit things within 1 to 2 years, right? We see it all the time with fellow entrepreneurs. And if you just keep going, you know, through the hard times, let it gradually grow. Don't worry about doing everything right now and right there. And it can, I feel like that's how you guys have been really sustainable. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really important point, Natalie. I think, and an additional piece of that, keeping going. Oh, having both feet in, fully in, right? For me, there wasn't really a lot of other options. I'm not going to go get a corporate job, right? I had another business at the time. It was another consulting company. I had like really a one-to-one training, language training company. But that was phasing out, and this was really where my heart was. But I think an important piece is consistency. So being all in, and if you tell your audience, just within podcasting, we actually publish 4 days a week on All Ears English, which I know sounds insane, but we have set up a system where we can do it. It makes sense. It works. But we've never missed a single 4 day of the week. We've never missed a single, there's never been a Monday that All Ears English has not published since we launched in 2013. That's 10 years. Or a Tuesday or a Wednesday or a Thursday. I mean, that's kind of the kind of consistency that you need in a way. You know, this is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, and I think utilizing a team, you know, or even a partner is really, really beneficial. Like you have a co-host, you have a team as well that kind of helps you on the back end of things.
Oh yeah, I just wouldn't have made it this far without a team, right? First of all, I would have been bored just talking to myself on the podcast. And so having that co-host is amazing. It's chemistry, it's connection, it's authenticity. And then on the support side, we have a nice team of VAs, virtual assistants. We have contractors that have helped us build our apps and help us with our transcripts. And you know, we just had our team sync last week, and just updating everyone on what's happening in the business and feeling that we're doing this together is a game changer for me. I mean, some people are able to do it on their own as a solopreneur, which is great. That's another business model, but I don't think I could have done it. Yeah,
me either. I think part of like sustainability too is like relying on other people. So we do episodes twice a week, Monday and Friday. And all I do is I just show up, look pretty, and I get to talk with the awesome guests, right? I hand that off to my team, and then they basically do everything else from there. So I'm hands off. Oh my gosh, it's such a nice feeling, and to have like a team, you know, that we all work so well together and communicate well with one another. It's just such a relief, and there's such a huge help. I actually had an assistant find a dentist for me. I don't know if you know, but in Florida, finding a dentist for kids is almost impossible.
I didn't know that. Huh.
Oh, it is so hard to find a pediatric dentist in Florida, especially one that takes your insurance. They're very rare. And so we do have to drive an hour away, but they found one for me. And so I was able to like post all over social media how amazing she is. And she felt so loved. And I just wanted her to know, like, I didn't have to do that. I didn't have to call these places and look at the reviews, look at the pictures to see if they have, like a playroom, right? Because, a lot of times in Florida, what happens, they say they take kids and they show up for the appointment and they're like, no, we don't have equipment for your kids.
Oh, they're in the waiting room. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I'm like, look for a waiting room that's geared towards kids in the pictures. And that's how you'll know if it's a pediatric dentist.
Interesting. So that's very next level. I can really admire that, getting a team to help you with personal tasks as well, which frees you up to focus on your work, right? I'm not doing that yet. I'm still kind of scrambling around, calling my dentist, doing my things, have not assigned personal tasks yet, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And you could, even if you do overseas or US space, it's really not that costly. I absolutely
Yes.
love her. She's absolutely amazing. And it was because we move. So I do this we move every 2 years. So I always get an assistant for that time when I move. There's not
Okay.
much year-round work, but she does other things for us too. She's a multitasker. She's amazing.
I
So
mean, the truth, like there are, your team it's the engine behind the business, right? I just had a
exactly.
conversation with my virtual assistant last night, and I said, I so appreciate it because sometimes I forget that you and the other teammates, they're the engine behind the business running. Like, why do things not blow up? It's because you guys you're consistent, you're getting it done, and it
Yeah.
lets me free up my mind to focus on other things. It's incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's really cool because I get to focus on the things that really I'm passionate about or that I'm really great at, and I'm great
Mm-hmm.
at like problem solving. And sometimes that can be really time tanker. And it's just having a team that I can rely on, be like, can you guys help me with this or that? Oh, it's amazing. And they're the absolute best. I will always shout out our marketing mavens. They're awesome. So
But
tell us
yeah.
more about, so you talked about you have your podcast, that's kind of your
Mm-hmm.
lead generation. We got your courses. That would you consider that your main offer?
Yeah, I mean, I think there are kind of four ways that All Ears English makes money, right? So we do courses, we do licensing, and we're getting into the B2B space, meaning business to business. So
Yeah.
working with companies, working with business platforms that would then have companies on the other side, like marketplaces. Does that make sense?
Hmm.
So we're selling our products, putting our products on these B2B marketplaces, and then companies are coming and buying it from the marketplace. Our apps are also monetized. So our apps just have a premium subscription option. So an Android iOS app. And then, yeah, I mean, that's pretty, so courses, licensing, and then sponsorships for our podcast. So that's the other piece that we've really gone into in the last year and a half or so.
That's super cool. I always say I read this book like a really long time ago. It says, millionaires always have minimum 7 streams of income. You've kind of built that within
Yes.
your business. So, so, so
Yes.
smart. I absolutely love that. And it's like
Yeah.
almost like a freedom in it too. Like, especially you have the app, which I would assume is kind of passive income. You probably have to do some updates and such to it. But
Yeah.
we have a software and it's just been a game changer for our business.
It's huge. I do a lot of mastermind groups with people in my space, other ESL course creators, and I see 100% focus on course building. I'm like, yes, courses are a great way to build a business, but when you have a business that's 100% based on sales of a course, scary to me. I'm always obsessing over diversifying, maybe too much, but it just feels like one's going to drop, like podcast ad revenue is probably going to drop in 2024. I realize that. So we're going to ramp up course sales, right? There's always levers that we can pull. But if there's one product, I don't know, maybe for a couple of years, but then if you want your business to run long term, start to diversify.
Yeah, 100%. And our needs are always changing. Your consumers' needs are always changing, is what I mean to
Sure.
say. And so
Yeah.
always evaluating that, looking at the data, super, super important. Well, I've loved having you on the show, and I thank you so much for all your insight. Where can we find more about you?
Well, your listeners can check out my podcast. Since this is a podcast, we're in the podcasting world. Your listeners can go and open the search bar and just type in All Ears English, and you'll actually see 3 shows pop up, all 3 of our shows. Everything is yellow. That is our branding. You could hit follow on All Ears English and check it out, see what our style is. And you could find me on LinkedIn. I'm happy to answer any questions or do any informal coaching or mentoring. Is something that I'm always happy to help out if people have questions. All right.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. I really appreciate you coming on the show. And we'll
Of
talk to you guys
course.
next time on the Virtual Antics